Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel today. Today we're going to be diving into the history of one of cinema's most iconic monsters, Godzilla. From his origin as a terrifying symbol of nuclear destruction to his current role today as more of an action star in blockbuster films. We're going to explore how Godzilla's meaning has evolved over time and what that says about us as an audience. Whether you're a lifelong fan of the King of the Monsters or just curious about the cultural impact of these big screen creatures, you're going to want to stick around for this one. Godzilla first roared onto the screen in 1954, in the midst of a world still grappling with the aftermath of World War II. Born from the devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the 1954 Lucky Dragon incident, Godzilla was more than just a monster. Director Ishiro Honda created a symbol of humanity's unchecked power, its hubris, and the destructive consequences of the nuclear weapons that we created. At a time when the world was trying to recover from the horrors of the atomic bomb, Godzilla stood as a terrifying reminder that what could have happened if this power, this nuclear experimentation, ever were to spiral out of control. These images on the screen right now are all too familiar to a post-war Japan, where Godzilla's rampage mirrored very real fears of nuclear fallout, contamination, and long-lasting effects of the atomic warfare. Godzilla wasn't just a monster wreaking havoc. He was a living metaphor for the terror that lingered in the minds of Japanese people at the time, as his very existence questioned the safety of nuclear power and a severe warning to its potential consequences and how that could easily all be flipped upon its head. In Maurice Lowe's words, Godzilla is born from the nuclear anxieties that haunted Japan in the 1950s. The film wasn't just an exercise in horror. It was a reflection of the societal trauma that had shaped a generation's psyche. This monster film that was deeply rooted in its cultural movement helped shape the minds of many at the time after this horrific event that took place. As the years went on, Godzilla's role in Japanese cinema began to shift. By the late 1950s and well into the 1960s, Godzilla moved away from this terrifying nuclear metaphor and personification of death that he had stayed in, and started to be shifted towards a more friendly figure for audiences all around. During the Showa era of Godzilla films, they straight up turned him into a defender of Earth. He was fighting other giant monsters like King Kong, Ghidorah, and other versions of himself. The original tragic figure that many audiences had grown up with or even had seen at the time was given way to a more comical action oriented icon, and that stuck around for well over many decades. In films like Godzilla vs. King Kong 1962, the focus shifted towards spectacle and fun rather than the bleak philosophical underpinnings of the original. While these films were entertaining and still carried the residual themes of like nature fighting against humanity's hubris, the symbolic weight of Godzilla as a nuclear metaphor was very diluted at this point. Audiences began to see Godzilla more as a hero and less as a cautionary tale that it once was. When Godzilla finally crossed the Pacific to Hollywood in the late 1990s, the transformation into a spectacle-focused monster was all but complete. In the 1998 American remake directed by Ronald Emmerich, it gave us a Godzilla that was way more CGI action than a symbolic death piece that it once was. Through its struggle to capture the essence of what made Godzilla so unique, it did show how Hollywood wanted to create a blockbuster out of the monster to gather the eyes of a global audience beyond what Godzilla has known before. By the time we get to Godzilla 2014 or King of the Monsters 2019, the shift towards a pure spectacle had fully taken root in this franchise. The 2014 film, directed by Gareth Edwards, reintroduced Godzilla as a force of nature, a protector of Earth who battles other gigantic, titanic creatures. The symbolism of nuclear fear took a very far back seat, as these films heavily focused on massive battles, special effects, and destruction on a global scale unlike anything seen before. For many of these films became less about the monster's original message and more about action. Well, interesting enough, while Hollywood is all in on that CGI destruction and massive battles, Recent Japanese films like Shin Godzilla and Godzilla Minus One have attempted to bring this monster back to its metaphorical roots, with films like Shin Godzilla being a direct response to Japanese struggles with the aftermath of Fukushima nuclear disaster. The film critiques how slow the government was respond to the crisis and how it highlights the fragility of modern society in the face of an uncontrollable disaster. In Shin Godzilla, Godzilla is a frightening, grotesque figure of what he once was, a symbol of something much deeper than a rampaging monster. He represented the inefficiency of the government in times of a crisis, and more broadly, the consequences of those human arrogance in the face of forces beyond our control. And this is so much shown between the differences of the atomic breaths. In 2014's, it's clearly saved as a spectacle, a part where audiences are going to clap and cheer for the big monster destroying the other big monster. It is something that is saved for this huge event. While with Shin Godzilla, the build up to the point where you finally get in the movie and he blares out his atomic breath, this tone is so much more different. The music that plays, the orchestration, and the vocals that overlay show the destruction that this beast has caused and how preventable it was. But due to the slow response of the government, Godzilla was able to kill all these millions of lives, and that is clearly shown throughout the movie. Similarly, Godzilla Minus One brings Godzilla back to his roots as a metaphorical for the scars left by war. These films remind us that Godzilla's true power isn't just size or destructive capability. It is what he represents in humanity's vulnerability and the catastrophic consequences of our actions. So where does this leave us? Godzilla has undeniably changed from his original message as a symbol of nuclear fear and has now become a culture icon on the global scale, one that represents spectacle, destruction, and action. But in this shift, has the deeper message of the character truly been lost? In hands of modern filmmakers, Godzilla is just used as another prop, another CGI monster to cheer on in battle. Yet, as we've seen in recent films like Shin Godzilla and Minus One, there's still a place for Godzilla to be much, much more than just a movie monster. He could still serve as his original commentary of the dangers of unchecked power, government failure, and the scars that are left behind by war. As fans, it is up to us to remember the depths of Godzilla's original meaning. What we look to in the past at the spectacle, the action, we can rediscover the cautionary tale that Godzilla has always been. He's not just a movie monster, he's a warning, and maybe just a warning that we can still learn from today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Godzilla's past and his evolution, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and a comment down below. Let's continue the conversation below with what do you think Godzilla represents today. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.